Good afternoon. This is a regular City Commission work session for the City of Largo for Tuesday, September 8th, 2020. I'd like to call this meeting to order. And as we do all of our City Commission work sessions, we're going to start today with a business spotlight from a new Largo business. Carissa.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor. Good afternoon, Honorable City Commissioners. For this afternoon's business spotlight, I am pleased to present to you the Bay Area Heart Cardiac, Vascular and Vein Center, and Dr. Jim Skorczewski from the Bay Area Heart Center is joining us today to represent the practice. He is an interventional cardiologist. Thank you so much, Doctor, for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Born and raised in Pinellas County, Dr. Skorczewski continues to care for his home community. He served as the prestigious Chief Cardiology Fellow in Largo Medical Center and Bay Pines VA Medical Center's Fellowship Program, and he is now building his practice out of the new Bay Area Heart Center location in Largo. Bay Area Heart Center has been in the Largo community for nearly 30 years, but has been in Pinellas County since 1982. The center was recently reopened in March 2020 in a newly renovated building at 200 Clearwater Largo Road North on the eastern corner of 2nd Avenue Northwest and Clearwater Largo Road. Bay Area Heart Center was previously a tenant at the Diagnostic Clinic building in the Medical Arts District within the West Bay Drive Community Redevelopment District. The medical clinic needed a new location and they found an opportunity to stay in the downtown Largo area, and we're really glad that they're still with us. The medical offices underwent a complete interior office remodel and a facade improvement. And as one of the 3 clinics in the Bay Area Heart family, the Largo location is home to 5 doctors with privileges at Largo Medical Center and Morton Plant Hospital. And the center has so many different specialties. I'm going to defer to Dr. Skorczewski on that. So I'm going to go ahead and go into our traditional questions that we ask you. Dr. Skorczewski, can you please tell us about your practice?
Sure. So, and again, thank you so much for that introduction. Being an interventional cardiologist, I particularly take care of a wide variety of cardiovascular issues. I take care of, at an extreme end, people coming into the hospital in an emergency situation, having heart attacks, and to put a stent in an artery that's clogged up to help save their life and to stop the heart attack from happening. But aside from that, that's one extreme. And then all manner of other types of cardiovascular issues, whether it's treating somebody's cholesterol or high blood pressure, if they have heart rhythm abnormalities. People might just have random symptoms where they come in with, they're fatigued, they're tired, they don't know what's happening with their body. And they think, hey, I'm just getting older. And a lot of times that ends up being a cardiovascular issue. One of the things that we offer in our office, the new one that we just had on Clearwater Largo Road, we offer a lot of testing along with the docs that are there. We can help diagnose and treat an underlying cardiac disorder that it might not be so obvious to, you as an individual, or even your primary care doctor, your other doctors that might be involved with your care. But between myself and all my partners, we take care of all manner of cardiovascular issues, not just specifically heart-related issues, but strokes, aneurysms. We perform ablations to help get rid of heart rhythm issues, implant pacemakers, treat vein disease if somebody has issues with the veins in their legs, or blockages with arteries in their legs. Those are also other spots that sometimes we don't think about for improving circulation. So that's kind of a brief overview of some of the different things that we do. And with all the providers, the doctors in our group, we have our office in Largo. We have a couple other offices in Pinellas County. We do spend a lot of time taking care of our patients also, not just in the office setting, but if they get really sick and end up in the hospital, like you said, we also go to Largo Medical Center and Morton Plant Hospital.
Can you please tell us a little bit about why you originally have always been in Largo. Can you tell us a little bit about the decision behind staying in downtown Largo? I mean, obviously close proximity to the medical center, but what drew you to that location on Clearwater Largo Road?
So that Largo is definitely a home for me. I went to high school in the area at Clearwater Central Catholic. I have a brother who's a nurse that works at another HCA hospital in St. Pete, and it's a community that is very near and dear to my heart. So I definitely have a sense of community and belonging when I am in Largo. It's for practicing, for just my own sense of well-being. I really enjoy being there. The town, the people, it's growing so beautifully. Things that they've done to just the downtown area. It feels there's a really good sense just driving around, being in that area. And same with the medical care there. The medical community is awesome. You couldn't ask for a better group of doctors to work with just in my own practice, but then just other doctors in the community too. Everyone's very collegial and provide excellent care to our patients.
Thank you, Doctor. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the challenges that your practice may experience?
One of the biggest challenges that I would say I see on a daily basis is awareness of cardiovascular disease. It's something that education really helps to bring home how important it is for us to pay attention to our bodies and to treat our bodies with respect, whether it's, the right diet and exercise, things that you hear maybe ad nauseum in the media, but it all is really true. And to know that, we can really impact our own health on a day-to-day basis. One of the things that I see as a big challenge, though, is just both our patients and other doctors that maybe aren't in the field aren't fully aware of how important it is to listen to our bodies. Our bodies don't come with a check engine light, So it's my job to determine if a vague symptom of fatigue or tiredness, is that a benign issue, or is that something that's related to a blocked artery that could be a ticking time bomb, maybe the start of a heart attack, fatigue, I'm just getting older, that sort of thing, and blow it off, but maybe there's something else that's going on. One of the things that I've seen that really helps to mitigate that as an issue is education. So, doctors, we're in school for a long time, and education is a big part of my life, and it still is. So I enjoy teaching, and one of the ways that I have found that challenges help to be met is by teaching. And one of the things that I've liked to do in the past is set up forums, whether it be some sort of community get together open to the local community, where it's showing up for an hour talk about, it could be atrial fibrillation, a particular heart rhythm issue, or what are the implications of chest pain? What are the different things that could cause chest discomfort? Is it always a heart attack, or could there be other things that relate to that? So that's one of the biggest challenges I think today, and to the point where even with everything going on with COVID, one of the dramatic things that we've noticed in the hospital setting, and this has been something that's been noticed worldwide since this epidemic has started, is that there's been a reduction, about 40% reduction in people going to the hospitals with heart attacks. The overriding presumption is, people are maybe scared and they're just staying at home having a heart attack. And, what are the implications of that? Are people dying at home unnecessarily? Are now they developing damaged hearts that are very, very weak because they didn't get to the hospital in a opportune time to treat their heart attack? We still have all of our care that we offer at the hospitals for emergency scenarios. And same with strokes too. There's a big reduction of people showing up to the hospitals with strokes. So that kind of goes along with the whole education side of things, is that, hey, it is safe to go to the hospital if you need to be there and get treated.
Doctor, thank you so much. I know we talked about some of the challenges. Can you maybe talk about what some of the things your practice is doing to help folks still be able to get the care, or during this pandemic time to continue to be able to get the care that they need using technology or other methods?
So, we have not shut our doors at all through this whole situation. We've followed through with all the guidelines and even taken it many steps further about safety for our patients, for office employees, for us, everyone involved who's coming to still get their cardiac care. And that I think really is important, especially from a cardiovascular standpoint, because there's only so much that we can do maybe over a phone visit, like a phone call or a Zoom chat, to be able to put a stethoscope over someone's heart and lungs and take a listen to them and really do a solid physical exam. That we have still been able to do that sort of thing, but within the office, definitely we've been practicing social distancing, the proper distances, cleanliness to the nth degree. If there's a scenario where, let's say it's a routine office visit and we're wanting to still keep tabs with our patient and keep contact with them and have an interaction with them where, we see how they're doing and how they're feeling, we have been using kind of like what we're doing right now with this remote interview, where we're able to talk to our patients over the internet, and it's video, we can see each other, and it's a different scenario than what I'm used to. I'm seeing some of my patients as opposed to in the office setting, well, geez, they might be in their dining room and their dog's running around in the background. So, it's a little bit of a different setup. But we've had quite a few patients who've opted, if there is a concern of, well, geez, I don't feel like I'm that sick. I'm doing relatively well. This can be a routine visit. I don't feel like I need to go into the office. Well, we have been doing that a lot too, which is a really nice option to be able to have this type of technology available so that we can still take great care of our patients. They know that we're there for them, and we continue to be. So that's a really, really neat thing where the technology has stepped up to a point where I never anticipated this sort of thing being an issue, but it's really been amazing to be able to still take care of our patients this way. Even in the hospitals, sometimes we've had the ability to make encounters where we're doing a video chat if somebody has been COVID positive, and we don't necessarily need to be in a room directly with them. We're able to still do the same sort of thing, talking to them over a live feed and see them and be able to communicate each other's concerns, and I can tell them what the game plan is. So the technology through this whole COVID epidemic has really, really, I think, stepped up and been a godsend for us all to be able to treat our patients.
Thank you, Doctor. How wonderful that we have this technology that the patients and the folks in the Largo community can continue to receive care from your clinic and from all of the doctors at your practice. So thank you for continuing to keep your doors open and for serving the community. I have a question, or it's our last question, and then after that we'll go on to questions from our city commissioners. What can Largo do for you and for your practice?
I think as far as what Largo can do for us, I do really, I would be interested in collaborating with the city if at all possible, kind of going back to one of the things I mentioned earlier, speaking where it would be a really neat thing to have the availability of a talk where, and maybe it could be something like this, like a Zoom activity where, or if not, maybe at a community center where I could give like an hour talk and just field questions. If somebody has questions about, a random medication or a heart issue, one of the ways I like to set up something like that is to have a topic that's already prepared, maybe a 30-minute talk, and then, well, geez, that branches off with a bunch of different questions that, whoever from the community decides to come and raise questions. It's a fun thing. You get to meet some neat people that way. And it does help, I think, to really build a sense of community, which Largo has a great heart and a lot of energy. So it would be I think that would be a neat thing for the city of Largo to be able to help collaborate with us to maybe put something together, at least a trial run, see how it goes. But I think it would work out pretty well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Skorczewski, for all of the information you provided about your practice. And I'm so glad that all of our residents can continue to see you and that we have you in our community, in the Largo community. I'm going to go ahead and ask the city commissioners now if they have any questions for Dr.
Commissioner Holmes, go ahead.
Thank you. I have several questions for you. Number one, when you're having a video chat, does that generate an invoice or is that benevolence on your behalf?
So if we're doing a video chat, that's an office visit. Is that what you're getting at? Yeah. So if
it's just a standard office call then.
Yeah, it would be an office visit. There have been billing codes that have been made up for the epidemic, specifically to allow patients to still get their care from their doctors, but via telemedicine.
Okay. Can you write a prescription on a video chat?
Yes. Yeah.
As long as it's not a new one, I gather.
So that is an interesting scenario. I've literally had brand new patient visits, which I'm not a big fan of this, but I've had brand new patient visits. First time I'm meeting somebody and it's on video. And I've started medications. I've arranged a cardiac catheterization to be scheduled with them. So it's a little bit of a lot of a unique experience, but we're able to pretty much do everything that you usually would in an office visit, whether it's, start a new prescription, schedule a procedure, that sort of thing. And then the odd thing is then I'm meeting them for the first time in person as they're getting ready to go through surgery. But we have been doing things like that, whether it's, pretty much the whole gambit of an office visit.
Okay. You mentioned a 40% reduction in hospital confinements and trips to the emergency room and urgent care facilities. Well, that's true. A lot of this was media driven. Now they were telling you, unless it's absolutely necessary, don't go.
Right.
You noticed an uptick in fatalities from heart attack and cancers and things like that, where the person did not seek early medical care?
I have definitely seen. So if it's someone that passes away, unfortunately, at home and they never make it there, I probably just am never hearing about those. And I think a lot of people might not be. I have been seeing an uptick in people showing up to the hospital who stayed at home with their heart attack, they basically completed their heart attack and have now a very, very severely weak heart muscle. And then all the subsequent stuff that happens with that. I've seen quite a few of those patients recently and they told me, they're like, I was so scared, I didn't want to go to the hospital. And then, I see them 2-3 weeks later now with a really bad heart. There's not much that we can do because it's just dead heart tissue that unfortunately wasn't treated in a timely manner.
Last question. To your knowledge, have you treated any COVID patients?
Yes.
To your knowledge.
Yes. I'd say pretty much all of my colleagues and myself, when we're in the hospitals, we're interacting with COVID patients, not necessarily on an everyday basis, but I'd say the majority of days when I'm in the hospital, I'm seeing at least 1 or 2 COVID positive patients.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Other questions? I had a question about kind of the proximity, where the office is on 2nd there. And I think it's really interesting that there's a couple new doctor's offices right in that area. It's real close to the Medical Arts Center. And so I expect we might see some more of that. My question is, how did you choose that particular spot just a few blocks from Largo Med?
So my group and myself, we go to Largo Medical Center and Morton Plant Hospital. So we're taking care of patients who are admitted there and doing procedures, surgeries in both of those hospitals. Where we're at, is just north of West Bay on Clearwater Largo Road. It's actually right where there's a merge lane that you lose, is the turnoff on Clearwater Largo Road. We have a fair number of patients that we see in that office that are more from northern parts of Clearwater, and then people down in Seminole and Largo that are coming up to see us as well. So it's kind of a nice central location for us to be able to take care of all of our patients in that area.
Nice. Commissioner Carroll, did you have a question?
Two things. Hey, doctor, thanks for being here.
Of course.
I just wondered if you'd been down to Largo Central Park to look at that heart sculpture that was recently put up.
I did not do that.
Yeah, you'll have to check that out.
I will definitely check that out.
Yeah, just turn south on Central Park Drive, and it's right there.
That's awesome. I will definitely have to check that out. I noticed all the beautiful work on the corner there, that's really cool.
It kind of leads to where I was going. Do you feel like the mayor? I'm very interested in your choice of location. Do you feel like you're pretty well informed about all the redevelopment plans for that particular part of our city?
Personally, I've seen it as far as the development. I don't know that I haven't gotten anything in writing or gone over all the details of what all has been done, but it looks like, obviously a lot has been done. But yeah, I'd be really interested to see sort of, if there's what the whole game plan entails, because it looks like a lot of effort has been put into really beautifying that area.
Yeah, and you're right on the kind of on the border between the Medical Arts District and the downtown area, and we have really high hopes that people will choose to live close to home. There's a lot of people that are in the medical field, or students over at the nursing school or whatever, would choose to live in that immediate area. So I'd kind of like to ask for your feedback as you're there in your practice, and if you've got suggestions or ideas, we'd love to hear them.
Definitely. Yeah, no, I would love to.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Well, thank you so much for being here with us today. It's always exciting to learn a little bit more about a business, although it's a new building, it's a business that's been here in Largo for a while. So great to hear from you today, and have a good afternoon.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, City Commissioners.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carissa. Next, we'll have the next item, which is discussion of Phase 1 progress for the City Hall project.
Yes, well, thank you very much, Mayor and Commissioners. And it's a great segue from Dr. Jim and his building right near where hopefully the new City Hall will be at some point in time in the near future. So today we are here to discuss a little bit about what the City Hall plans are at this point. We are closing in on the end of Phase 1, which is the initial design of our in site analysis. And John Kern is here today to go over the results of Phase 1, and then we'll be able to answer any questions at the end of this. John?
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Commissioners and Mayor, thank you for being here. Is there any way to turn over the screen to me? Or just share?
Yeah, just hit screen share. You should be fine.
Wait a minute.
Okay, try it again.
All right. I'm going to share with everybody an abbreviated presentation. Many of you have seen this, but it is a simple summary of what we've been doing for the last 6 to 9 months. We started off really first and foremost trying to understand the vision of the city. Really what's important, wanted to make sure that this is a building that will withstand the test of time. Create a building that's a modern, compact, multi-story integrated mixed-use building, which is a very unique thing for a city, especially being right on West Bay Drive and its impact, creating a building that minimizes the land it sits on so that we could perhaps go up and allow for future development in the future. And with that multi-story integrated mixed-use building, recognize there's an opportunity to create commercial and retail space with City Hall, which is a very unique thing for a City Hall facility. Also recognize the importance of creating and building along the front of West Bay Drive. Whatever we do, we wanted to make sure we maximize that impact. Also create a building that interacts with the surroundings and its natural environment. Recognize this is in Florida, it's in the downtown of Largo, but take advantage of those things, whether it's natural daylight or whether it's the sun and the potential for any kind of alternative energy sources. And probably most importantly, what we heard quite often was create a collaborative environment, an environment where all the staff and the citizens of Largo really feel welcome when it comes to City Hall, so that there's an interaction between staff and citizen that I think is really important. In the spirit of that, what we actually did as we moved forward, we conducted a series of workshops where we spent a significant amount of interactive time with staff and every department, as well as commissioners and the mayor, to understand really what they wanted to see in City Hall, as well as understand how people work and how their future needs can be put together. This was about a 2-month period. We spent a lot of time going through a survey and understanding and hearing every voice possible. As we went through this process, there's about 190 employees at City Hall, and about 132 participated in that survey, which I think is a really wonderful participation rate. Gathering all of that information in detail, we ultimately came to a conclusion where City Hall will be a building that's about 82,500 square feet. This satisfies all the needs of every department as well as future growth. And it gives the city some flexibility in terms of how they want to use that space. During that time, we also conducted a market and economic analysis with our consultant, Kimley Horn. The importance of this analysis was really to make sure that whatever we do with this vision of a potential multi-story mixed-use City Hall facility, that this project could support a significant amount of retail and commercial space. The ultimate result of that report and analysis is that even in a post-pandemic era, could easily support 20 to 25,000 square feet on West Bay Drive. And I think that's really important. So we started to look at the opportunity to integrate that 20,000 to 25,000 square feet into the project in many different ways. Our consultant also conducted a parking multimodal study. This was an analysis that looked at all different ways that people move and transport themselves around the city of Largo. Ultimately, the end result, really the focus here was to make sure that we would design enough parking to support not only a city hall of about 80,000 square feet, but be able to support potential retail and commercial space that could be upwards of 25,000 square feet. The end result of that study was the need for at least 360 spaces in and around the site. So in every site analysis that we looked at, we basically supported a garage of about 360 cars. So once we had gathered all of that information, had gone through the programming process, we're able to ultimately understand the needs of 82,500 square feet for City Hall, understand the retail potential here, as well as the parking needs. It was time to sort of jump into a fairly lengthy process. And we did this site analysis process during essentially the pandemic and the lockdown. So everything here was done virtually, which has been a very interesting process because it sort of allowed us to go through a very methodical approach. So we went through sort of a broad brush analysis along West Bay Drive, and we looked at as many as 4 different zones along West Bay Drive. We studied as many as 30 different configurations, narrowed that down to 20, Ultimately, with the city of Largo, narrowed that study down to as many as 8, where during those 8 configurations and different sites, we actually looked at it in 3 dimensions. After that, we were able to, as a team, narrow the choices down to 3 options. So when you see the numbers option 1, option 2, and option 6, these were the results of really the last 8 options that we studied. So when we went through this process, we got to the final 3, and we took those 3 to a much further level of development to really understand how the program would fit into those buildings, how they interact in many different ways, understand the pros and cons of each one of these possibilities, and then even understand sort of the the real estate components of each one of these options. So basically, these 3 options are developed in much more detail than any of the other studies that we actually looked at. So what you'll see basically is a series of diagrams, start off with plan for each one of the options. So when you see on the screen now, basically is a plan to the left, which represents option 1, which sits right on the corner of 1st Street Northwest and West Bay Drive. So one of the things that we started to look at immediately was recognizing the opportunity to close 1st Street and maybe give the property a little bit more land to play with and create a very interesting public space opportunity. Well, I'll get into that in a little bit more detail, but you can see replacing City Hall along West Bay Drive towards the front so we can maximize that impact along West Bay Drive, and the parking structure towards the back of this property. Every time you see a plan, you'll see this diagram in blue, and the blue site plan diagram represents the parcels of property from a real estate procurement standpoint that would need to take place to obtain these properties. One of the things that we, like I said, we recognized the opportunity to close 1st Street. We also saw that opportunity with 1st Avenue Northwest as well, so we could create a larger site and really maximize the potential development along this property as best we can. So here you start to see the building in 3 dimensions. You can recognize the statistics for the building itself. You can see that exposure along West Bay, the parking garage towards the back. This is a view along West Bay Drive. I'm not going to go into detail of these stacking diagrams, but the one important thing is to see that ground floor, the way retail sort of interacts with different activities of the City Hall, and then the majority of the functions of City Hall are on the upper floors. I talked about this particular site having an opportunity to create a very interesting public space. So this is the one property that is closest to Central Park. So what we saw as an opportunity was the garage could ultimately, be used not only for Central Park, or sorry, for City Hall, but it could also be used for events at Central Park. So if any visitor was to park in the garage, they can easily interact with City Hall, but they would also have this opportunity along the CSX Railroad to have this very wonderful sort of pedestrian pathway and public space that provides easy access to Central Park and, of course, easy access to West Bay. We kind of recognize this particular project as sort of the gateway into the West Bay Drive or the gateway into downtown. Just a couple of that possibility. Here you can see the main entry off of West Bay. You can kind of get a glimpse of that pedestrian pathway over on the right. Essentially, this is a 4-story building with the primary public functions for City Hall happening on the ground floor, and then community development interaction up on the 2nd floor. The second option we looked at was in our what we refer to as Zone 3. This is actually sort of the south area of West Bay Drive. It's on the corner of Southwest 4th Street and West Bay Drive, and it consumes a property that we were kind of referring during the process to as the church site. So as you see the diagram in blue, the parcels that are represented are basically parcels that would be purchased from the church properties or the church entity. So in this particular scheme, all properties would need to be purchased. We examined many different options along this area and made a very conscious decision to minimize the amount of road closures for this particular property. But one opportunity we recognized that was really important to take place was to actually take over along West Bay Drive, the angled parking right here up on the, right along West Bay. And what that did for us, you can see it here in the blue diagram, that gave us this opportunity to bring City Hall right up front and center onto West Bay Drive. And then the properties to the south presented themselves as a great opportunity to put the parking structure towards the back, gave us the opportunity to really not interfere with the street, but still provide that covered access way from the garage to City Hall. Again, in the diagram, you'll see that beige area represents that retail impact onto West Bay Drive. And then the areas in sort of red and pinkish color are the elements of City Hall that happen on the ground floor. This is also a 4-story scheme. Three-dimensionally, you can start to see how City Hall is a very simple configuration, very simple building block right along that West Bay Drive, where parking sits towards the back. There's a combination of parking garage and surface parking. Based on following the district plan, the West Bay district plan, this particular property would require a lot more sensitivity to the height of the garage. We were able to accomplish the needs of the garage within the height restrictions of the West Bay district plan. This gives you a good sense of a view looking west along West Bay, give you that sense of sort of that front and center entry of City Hall. Some additional views, this is the elevation along West Bay Drive. This is a view looking towards the east and a view right at that entry corner right here along West Bay. A night view looking at sunset. The third option that we looked at in more detail basically is the full block that sits between 4th Street Northwest and 5th Street Northwest, right along West Bay Drive. In this particular zone, you'll see it says Zone 4. Zone 4 made up a number of, actually 4 total blocks. And this property really presented itself as a great opportunity. Maybe one primary reason was because the city actually owns almost 2/3 of the block. So you can see in this particular diagram, 1 through 7, these are parcels that would need to be obtained, but all of the other parcels that are on the site are actually owned by the CRA. So recognizing that this was a block that also is the longest block along West Bay, it potentially gives us the best opportunity for maximizing impact along the West Bay Drive. It's a very simple diagram in terms of the building. Garage on the left, garage on the left here on the west side, and then City Hall along the east side of the property. And then there is essentially a public space down the center. And then it's all connected by a canopy system that we took the opportunity to provide a solar array that provides shade, but also ultimately would provide energy for the building. Again, you start to see the diagram, the way it's stacked. You can see in 3 dimensions, the City Hall component. You see that connected canopy, the garage. This is a 5-story scheme. And you can see here along the ground, this particular option presented itself a great opportunity to sort of maximize that retail and commercial space within the garage component. So you can see in City Hall, there is retail commercial activity along West Bay here, and then a large swatch that is along West Bay, and then within the public space area. And then through the public space is where you actually enter this particular scheme. Some options or views. This would be the view looking north along West Bay Drive. Again, on the right side is the City Hall component. We took the opportunity to sort of create this very open, transparent type building. You know, one of the results that came out of our workshops with everybody, we heard a number of different needs, but every department and pretty much every member of the City Hall or the City of Largo that we talked to really wanted us to maximize daylight, create as much ample meeting space in the complex as possible, make it a welcoming and collaborative environment, be sensitive to private space because various departments need that, as well as making sure it's safe. So security and safety was also something we heard as well. You start to see these particular views. And then this is towards the north side. This is an opportunity that sort of jumped out at us. If we have surface parking on the property, the idea of not just making it a parking lot, but potentially utilizing those surfaces for various events. So even along that public space area, the opportunity to use a simple surface parking lot, perhaps for movies on the lawn. You know, we went through this process. Each one of those options was developed at sort of the same level. We did a series of studies and analyses from a construction cost standpoint. But I think as a team, we recognized that this particular option presented itself as really a preferred option. And we thought, because since we're looking at these things through our screens, we would take the opportunity to share with you a video. So we took option 6. We actually developed a flyby that would give you a good sense of the three-dimensional quality for this particular option. So as we go along West Bay, you see the garage. As towards the backside, we would propose sort of very simple green screens along the south edge of the building. You can see potential for that commercial development along West Bay. The garage would be screened in a very similar way that we're proposing to screen City Hall building on the south side. I mentioned the transparency of that entry at City Hall off of the public space, but having that sort of floor to ceiling glass is okay because it's protected by a fairly elaborate sunscreen and some shading devices. You can see again that commercial opportunity along West Bay. As you go along 4th, you start to get a good view inside the building, and I think you can start to see the way daylight just sort of floods into the space. As you get to the north side of the building, the idea of maximizing that glazing so that light can come in, good quality light. You can see that the potential for that surface parking that's used during the day, throughout the day, but the option maybe on Saturdays could be used for some kind of market. The interaction of the public space with the retail components. So the idea of City Hall is not just used, throughout a busy week, but it's a destination, 24/7 for the most part throughout the year. So whether, City Hall might be closed, this becomes that place where people really want to interact and maybe utilize some of those retail commercial spaces, whether it's a restaurant or a shop, whatever the case may be, but that public space is utilized for city events throughout the year. As we come into potential lobby space, one of the things we heard was, again, maximizing that meeting space, but also provide those sort of impromptu locations where a booth, for instance, you could meet with the public and just have an impromptu meeting without having to go into a specific office or anything like that. Instead of meeting someone at a local coffee shop, you could meet them at City Hall because the environment is that sort of open and collaborative. And it's a comfortable environment that you guys could take advantage of and utilize. As we pull around, we just sort of took it upon ourselves to throw some artwork, perhaps hanging like a mobile. The idea this project would likely have art in public places attached to it. There's a number of opportunities that could be explored, but we wanted to just sort of splash some color into that public space. So again, you could see this opportunity. We felt that this was one of the best ways to give you a good sense of the potential three-dimensional quality of the project. So with that, I wanted to share with you also, I mentioned we explored cost. So each one of these options was explored from a construction cost standpoint. So what's on the screen right now is actually the cost evaluation that was done for option 6 with the garage, all of the retail components, the interior fit out for City Hall. This particular option, besides some of the real estate benefits I was mentioning before on option 6, it actually presented itself as one of the lower construction cost possibilities, which was about $1 million to $1.2 million over the higher one. That's probably because of the road closures that we were proposing, because there are some utility relocations that we would have to undertake in order to accomplish option 1 or option 2. But they all are in the same sort of realm of construction cost. But that $38.2 million represents the probable construction cost of everything that you see here. So that was really the focus of all of our exercises. We're at a point now where we've kind of concluded this approach, and I think the next steps basically, I guess, is where I'll turn it over to you, Matt, to sort of finish that discussion.
Yeah, so the next steps involve, first step that was made last week at the commission meeting when we signed on the construction manager at risk. And that was Biltmore, and we're currently in negotiations with them. Henry can discuss some more about the real estate portion of this. And then the next part will be to bring to the commission phase 2, phase 3 design contract for approval, so we can continue with the design portion of this project, as well as getting the construction manager at risk involved in looking at some of the costing scenarios as well. Myself, City Manager Schubert, and Kim Adams and Carol Strickland are all meeting this week again to discuss financing and how that's going to go as well. So there's a lot of irons in this fire, and hopefully it'll be burning for bright for a couple of years until we get this building built and up. But we've got a lot of things going on with this to get this the project to completion. So we are just at its very infancy.
Yeah, maybe I'll just add on to that very quickly. Matt made a comment about the real estate aspects. We do have a commercial realtor who is engaging the property owners on all 3 of these potential sites to determine the availability of the properties that would need to be purchased. And then, as Matt also stated, a staff is continuing to evaluate the overall budget for the project and the financing of that, and we will be bringing that to you shortly. Obviously, you need to have information both on property availability and cost and the full budget information before we proceed with additional design.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from any of the commission? No comments. Commissioner Smith.
Have we reached out to some of the businesses that are down there in downtown with this plan, or are we going to start doing that soon with these plans?
We are going to engage the community in these plans. We need to develop that next phase of the project.
Okay, and I really do like the mixed use. I really enjoyed that we're getting retail in there and commercial space. Something I've always seen when I go places is city halls at 5 o'clock. They are basically dead zones, and I think this is moving forward. This is a wonderful design, and I think that I love the part with the back with the movie theater at night, maybe, and also a market. I think that would be terrific, because that's something I've heard with people with the downtown, is if they could have a market down there or something that they can enjoy. And also the parking spaces. Another thing I've gotten a lot of residents that have talked about is parking. I think that's out there. It shows them where parking is. It's not behind a building at the moment. So I think that will generate that. Also, with the development that's coming next to it, we're going to be working with them, correct, Henry?
Yes, we will certainly be coordinating our efforts with whatever they ultimately decide to do there. And I'll just say there are continuing discussions with the developer of that site.
Okay. And also, how much is this project like tied in with multimodal uses on this piece of property?
What do you consider multimodal uses, sir?
Places where people can park bicycles and if they wanted to ride their bike to work or something like that.
Yeah, those types of features will be a part of this complex for sure.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other questions or comments?
Oh, I did have one more.
Commissioner Smith.
Matt, you did say the financing, and I don't want you guys are still going over it, so this isn't a locked in. Okay. I don't want someone to see a price tag and freak out. Okay. All right.
We're a little ways away from a locked in number.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions, comments? I know it's
we make sure that we watch Back to the Future on the side of the building.
Yeah.
Got me.
Yes. You can bring your DeLorean to the.
I got it. It's a date.
Perfect.
I know that we're extremely early on and most of these, all these designs are conceptual, but just visually, I'll tell you, I think the option over on First near the railroad tracks, I like the look of that building better. I think. I understand that. In fact, I like the look of this building better as well. But it just looks more modern. The design for where the fourth and the preferred design looks a little bit like the old Tampa City Hall. There's some other government building around here that looks like it's a little bit old. And I'm talking just from the street view. I really like the way that the courtyard is and the way that the surface parking kind of is situated in the back. That's all great. Just I think and I like the solar shade structure, but something could be tweaked, I think, on the front. And I know that we've got a long road till we get to that point. But if I didn't mention it, I think I'd be kicking myself.
Mayor,
Sure.
may I? Oh, excuse me.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. But can I just add on to that? I think when you're looking at and I don't want to speak for you, but my comment on that would be when you're looking at this picture that they're showing right now with the shading that they have over the parking garage, as well as some of the glazing, the shading over the glazing on the actual building structure. I think that's probably what is causing that look. I think if they were to open up some of that glazing like the entrance is here in the middle, I think that might eliminate some of that look. I don't know what you would have to do. I am by no means an architect or designer, but what you would have to do to make that parking garage not look like a parking garage. I think on the one side they did have some green some sort of foliage on that, but something like that I think would help to improve that design, make it look a little more modern.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm getting at. This from the street side looks the least modern out of the three, in my opinion. And it's probably you're right. Probably has to do with the shading on that on the parking garage. Any other questions or comments? Well, I know that I'm pretty confident that we're all excited. Commissioner Smith asked about some of the businesses. I know some of the businesses in the downtown area have come and talked to me about they're excited to see a real renewed focus on kind of moving back downtown and stuff. So the word is out there, even if we haven't had a concerted effort from the staff to reach out to folks. But the community is definitely excited about this.
As a staff and everybody that we've talked to about this is really excited about it. And
while COVID came and kind of swallowed up some of our other efforts, this project has gone along has stayed the course. So we're gonna keep pushing on, and we'll be back to you on a number of occasions to give you more information. And if anybody has any questions between now and that time, I'm more than happy to sit with any of you and go through the plans in more detail.
Great, thank you for bringing this to us, and look forward to the next update.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we'll talk about library borrowing fines, late fees.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. Jen's going to do the slideshow for us. Good afternoon again. Over the last few years, the library has sought out and provided services to the underserved population of Largo through our outreach initiatives, the bookmobile, and most recently, home delivery. Adopting a fine-free model will increase our capacity toward ensuring every community member has an opportunity to benefit from everything the library has to offer. The term fine-free means removing all overdue charges on materials that have been assessed and preventing future overdue charges from accruing on patron library accounts. However, patrons would continue to be responsible to pay replacement costs and processing fees for items that have never been returned or have gone to lost or damaged beyond repair. Many libraries, including all the surrounding counties, have gone fine-free already. Tampa Hillsborough County with their Just Bring It Back campaign, Sarasota, and most recently, Pasco County, not to mention others in-state and nationwide. In addition to the patron benefits, many libraries, including Chicago Public Library, found that the rate of returned overdue materials increased by over 200%. Plus, patrons who are afraid to return to the library found their way back, as evidenced by an increase in library card renewals. Eliminating fines also reduces valuable staff time in tracking, verifying, collecting, and reporting transactions. Hillsborough County saved $25,000 in personnel costs, debt collections fees, and cash transfer fees after they eliminated fines in 2017. I'll have Jen take over.
Libraries also found an increase in new patrons who perhaps were deterred from joining by the possibility of fines. Studies have shown that many low-income potential patrons, the very people who could benefit from library services, see the risk of fines as a barrier. Not only that, but a study by the Public Library Association found that fines fail to incentivize timely return of materials, the very thing that theoretically fines are supposed to be doing. Ultimately, fines punish loyal patrons who can't get a book back on time, or elderly patrons who don't want to venture out in bad weather just to return a book. This slide shows the fine-free campaigns for Sarasota and Pasco County. Sarasota County found that 22% of all their cardholders were blocked because of overdue fines, and 24% of those blocked accounts belonged to children ages 5 to 18. Collected fine revenues have decreased significantly over the last few years. One reason is that the Pinellas Public Library Cooperative has instituted 2 automatic due date renewals. Another reason is an increased usage of digital resources, particularly this year when the library building was closed in the spring. On this graph, the top line shows overdue fines plus payments or charges for lost or damaged items. And you can see that the fine-free or the fine-only line just below it hasn't changed quite as dramatically, or has changed more dramatically. In the last couple of years, the revenue on late fines has decreased from $52,000 to $38,000, a difference of 27%. And the projected revenue for FY20 indicates a further decrease of 38% in just 1 year. The FY20 amount does take into account that the library is closed for almost 3 months this year, and that all items due before the closure were given an extended due date of August 1st. Overdue fines are currently on Largo patron records are approximately $60,000 total, but there's no guarantee of ever collecting this balance. A fine-free approach would make a positive impact on patrons who thought that their library privileges were permanently revoked and would send a strong message of inclusion and support for marginalized populations.
The proposed end of library fine assessment would align Largo Public Library with libraries across the region and around the nation who see the value of equity, diversity, and inclusion through library services. The library's goal is to make resources available to those who need them most, invite disengaged patrons to return, and encourage new users to gain access to all the library has to offer, thus creating a sustainable avenue for library services. The Pinellas Public Library Cooperative library directors have been discussing this initiative and will hold a vote in October at their October meeting to determine the direction of the consortium. If an agreement is not reached, the library staff proposes Largo move forward with a modified approach by forgiving past fines and eliminating fines on transactions. This concludes our presentation. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the commission?
No.
Commissioner Holmes.
Thank you. Indulge me on this thing, but I found this whole thing ridiculous. I mean, the argument you have here is the same as speed limits. If you're not going to enforce a speed limit where there's no penalty for speeding, what's going to keep you from speeding? And this thing about how Hillsborough County saved $25,000, in manpower, et cetera, at what cost? How much material did they not have returned? I mean, how many people have gone into the library in Hillsborough County, checked out books, and the next thing you know, these books are in a used bookstore? I mean, there's no, I read this whole thing and I went, you got to be kidding me. Where's the logic behind this thing? Let me read you a paragraph here. It says the American Library Association encourages the national trend to adopt a fine-free model in order to remove barriers to service. Like what? What kind of barrier?
If a person has a fine of $10 or more currently in our system, they are barred from checking out any further materials. This does not include the items that have never been returned or items that are damaged. This is just fines only. They did return the items, they were late. So they can't check out any more materials. In fact, their card can't even be renewed until that's been cleared up. So
well, this is a matter of teaching personal responsibility, though. You know, you've gone into a public arena, which is the library, which is funded by tax money. And so you've utilized this arena free of charge, but there's a rule on the thing. You have to return it within X amount of period, or I guess you can get it renewed. I assume if someone wants to keep a book for a week and they say, well, can I keep it for 2 weeks? Is that granted?
Oh, yes. Actually, right now, there are 2 automatic renewals. They don't even have to ask for a renewal. A checkout time period for most of our materials is 4 weeks. If the item is not on hold, they get 2 automatic renewals right now. So potentially they could have the item out.
Okay. So I don't know where this barrier to service comes from, but the American Library Association states that fines are a form of social inequity.
Yes.
Like?
It's been a lot of different studies have shown that lower income communities account for 14% of overall circulation, but over 30% of those accounts were blocked. So the inequity is that the people who aren't able to pay their fines no longer have, the service available. They no longer have access to all the library materials.
What percentage of Largo cardholders are blocked right now?
What percent of Largo? I don't have that information, but I can get it for you.
Okay, because if you said 38% of it nationwide, what percentage locally is there?
I would imagine it's probably pretty close to the same. And most of those fines are disproportionately children, we have found also. So teaching children responsibility is not our forte. It would be the parents who would do that. And really, there's no evidence to support the claim that the fines are actually teaching someone something. They're more punitive than they do teach. In fact, some libraries in Vernon County, Vernon Library, found that the number of days items were overdue dropped by 42% after they eliminated fines. So seeing fines as an incentive to return materials, it doesn't seem to be the case. It just ultimately is punitive.
Call it a generation problem, but when I was a kid, you returned the library book, and if there was a fine, you paid the fine, period. It was a good teaching tool. Just like if you break the law, you're driving the car too fast and the cop pulls you over and you get the ticket, you pay the fine, you're not going to forget that again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I had a question about how long does, currently, how long does it take for a book to be considered lost? Like, with the person
after the item's been renewed, if possible, if there's no holds on it, then the time frame for it to be considered lost is usually 60 days after the due date. That can be adjusted. In fact, we probably will adjust it. Other libraries have adjusted it when they've had that automatic process. Then they've closed up that time period after the last due date for when it goes to lost, so that then the patron gets the notification that the item is now lost. If they don't return it, they have to pay the price of the item and then a processing fee. And then if they do return it, there is no fine.
So you said that the date that it goes to loss is being changed in some of the libraries that are adopting this. Are they making it a longer period of time or a shorter period?
Shorter period of time because of the automatic renewals.
Okay, good. My other question is, I think there's a limit on the number of books or the number of different items that you can take out of the library. Is that true?
There are some of the items that do have limits, like DVDs and Blu-ray. For a total number of items that we can check out is 50.
Okay.
And we have a lot of teachers and things like that, or homeschoolers who do check out quite a few items.
The last question I had was, you mentioned some numbers of fines for a couple of years ago was in 50,000. Last year, I think it was 30-some thousand, and this year it's trending to be smaller, but we were closed for a little while, and we've forgiven fines for a little while. Does that include the fees for lost books as well, or significantly damaged books, or is that just late fees?
The top line on that graph showed that the lost and damaged items. The bottom line of the graph showed the fines only.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Maybe we have a librarian in our midst. Commissioner Smith.
I'm in complete disagreement with Commissioner Holmes right there. But I work in this field and see people all the time. And as a staff person, having to explain to a patron who comes in that they have late fees. Prime example, I just twice now had a resident who came in who can't make it there because she has her daughter who she's waiting on. And every time she has to pay $20 in late fees. Even though, she does renew it when she can, but when it hits something that can't get back, she's late on it and she gets that late fee. I think I serve as the commission liaison on this board, and the advisory board supported this. I see it going on, around us, surrounding, they're doing it. And I think our staff, what they go through, and when you have to tell someone that, it is really, really tough. And it's an emotional drain on you when you have to tell a child who's, that they got some late fees and that their parent, they can't afford to check books out. Our society is supposed to be about educating people. And I understand your part about punitive and that stuff, but mine is have a heart. That's about the best I can say. So I support this 100%, and our library staff do an awesome job and keep it up. And that's all I have at the moment.
Thank you. Commissioner Holmes, Commissioner Carroll.
Yeah, forgive me, but I've been on both sides of this argument. I have to agree in part with Commissioner Holmes. If you rent a car and don't bring it back, they come looking for the car pretty soon. So I am about personal responsibility. I had the misfortune of having my daughter check out some material in high school that I found when she went to grad school, and I had to pay the fine on that. So that was no fun. And I also used to work for a city manager who was kind of a fanatic about these things. And as a police captain, I was making phone calls trying to get delinquent library materials back. I found that a little bit difficult, but in this situation, I guess I would rely on the subject matter experts, our library staff. I don't want to just say no to revenue, but it's really not about the revenue. It's about getting the materials back, and I understand the cost associated with staff time and so forth. But somewhere in this discussion has to be something about personal responsibility, and I'm just not convinced that it's for lack of a better term, a socioeconomic thing that we're trying to do here. It's just about if you check something out, bring it back. So however we get there, but again, I'm going to defer to the library staff on what they think is the best solution here. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I may, there's still personal responsibility in returning the item. There will be a charge for lost items or damaged items. So it's about taking it out, keeping it in the condition that you got it, and returning it to the library, not necessarily on time, but we do still have due dates, or we will still have due dates. And the expectation is that we will get more patrons because of this removal of the barrier of fines.
Yes, I mean, a lot of people have horrible childhood memories of fines. They couldn't use the library after somehow they didn't get a book returned. It's heartbreaking to hear that, a kid couldn't get to the library themselves. It's the parents' responsibility, certainly, if they're not even driving. And then, they come in and they can't check out materials. It's sad, but it is a responsibility. That's why I like the Tampa Hillsborough County's Just Bring It Back campaign. So that's all we want. We want you to bring it back. And I like the way that they use that campaign.
I have a question.
Commissioner Hulk.
Yes, so I just wanted to verify. So we're not necessarily doing away with, okay, you can come check out a book and that's it. If you don't bring it back, you don't bring it back. So this is basically just regarding the late fees.
Correct.
So after a 6-month period and they still haven't brought it back, then they will not be able to check out books and they will owe for whatever was not brought back then.
Yes, it would probably be shorter than 6 months, but yes, they would owe the price of the replacement cost of the item that was returned, plus a $5 processing fee.
Okay, all right. So I just want to make sure that it's just not like Commissioner Holmes said about, come and check out a book and then all of a sudden we have all these Largo library books in thrift stores and used bookstores.
No.
Okay.
No.
All right. So there is some form of personal responsibility then. It's just that we're not going to be chasing people down for 10 cents a day. I don't even know how much it is, 20 cents a day or whatever the late fees are, but they are still responsible for the actual book or DVD that they do check out at some point. Okay, thank you, Jerry.
Each book would have a due date and then a deadline. If you don't get it back by the deadline, then you're going to have to buy a new book or replace it or whatever with the cost. Commissioner Holmes, did you have something else?
Yes, I do. If we're having a problem collecting a fine, how much luck are you going to have collecting the cost of replacing the material plus an additional administrative fee?
We already do collect the material, for damaged and lost books now, and we do use a unique company. It's called Unique. And they are one of the companies in the country who does basically collections for libraries, and they do for fines and lost materials and damaged materials. So we would continue.
Well, I'll tell you what, I have a suggestion though. Rather than putting out this blanket amnesty here, why don't you do what the Code Enforcement Board does? The first time you come before the Code Enforcement Board, you can be forgiven, period. That's it. Second time you come before the Code Enforcement Board, you will not be forgiven. I mean, I'm oversimplifying this thing, but nobody comes before the Code Enforcement Board the second time and just skates on the thing and they just say, just forget about it. They'll file a lien against the property. So there is a little bit difference between code enforcement. I mean, I realize this is pretty small amounts of money here, in the scheme of things, but still in all, I think you have to maintain some form of responsibility to the individual. Not a kid per se, except when I was a kid, you had responsibility one way or another. Of course, my parents would be in jail for what they did to us, but anyway. But somewhere along the line, it's really up to the parents to teach the responsibility to the children. I'm done.
Mayor, may I?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Thank you. So I agree with Commissioner Carroll in kind of, listening to the experts here. And I think in the presentation that they just showed us, all of the concerns that were expressed by Commissioner Carroll as well as Commissioner Holmes were addressed. I think all of those situations and all of the issues were addressed. If it's working in a large chunk of libraries throughout the country, there's no reason to think that it's not going to work here in Largo. And so my question then to Jerry would be, if the Pinellas County Library Cooperative, I'm sorry if I don't have the name right there, but if they move forward with this, how's that going to work if we decide that we don't want to do this for whatever weird reason that would be? How would that work?
Well, if we don't know what their direction is, we do know what they're thinking about it. They're going to hold a vote this October, and if they do vote for it, it would go into effect next October of 2021. If the consortium does vote to move forward with this, and Largo has not directed us to join them, then we would be essentially the only library in the county that would charge patron fines.
Right, which would really put us on the out, correct?
I would think, yes. And
yeah, I would imagine so.
That most of our patrons would go to other libraries, because then if they return their items to other libraries, then they wouldn't have a fine. If they returned it to our library, then they would have a fine.
Correct. All right, thank you. I think that your presentation was great. I think all the concerns that I were mentioned earlier were addressed in that presentation. And I support this 100%. So good job. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other questions? I know a couple of people mentioned that, Commissioner Carroll, just a second. A couple of people mentioned that we're talking about a small amount of money, and that's kind of the point. To some people, this is a small amount of money. If it's $5 to get your library card out of hock because you turned in some books late, but some people, that's a lot of money. And they're going to say, okay, we're not going to go to the library today because we don't have the $5 to pay for that fine. And if we can do something to change that, I think it's well worth it. Commissioner Carroll.
Yeah, I was just going to circle back. And again, I wholeheartedly support whatever Jerry and the library staff have come up with. And I don't want to be the only library in the county that is, on the outs, in Commissioner Robinson's words. But, if you go to college and you don't turn in all your material and you apply for graduation, guess what you got to do? You got to pay up, right? So we're having this discussion to answer the question for the citizen out there who recognizes that the library material is purchased, it's a city asset, it belongs to the city, and we got to do our job to safeguard that material. And again, I come back to, if it's not worth the cost of collection to go after these things, and it is some barrier, and in practice, it's been shown that the material comes back more often than not, then I'm going to defer to Jerry and her staff, because, they're the experts. I'm not about trying to come up with a better idea here. They got the good ideas. Thanks.
Other questions? Well, thank you. Look forward to seeing it.
Thank you. So going forward before the vote, did you have any does the commission support moving forward, or did you want to wait and see what the cooperative wants to do, or any direction from you?
My personal preference, I like to lead the way on things. You know, the yellow dot program is coming to the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council in a couple of weeks, and the EMS Advisory Board, and that's something that we led the way on. I like to be the leader, so I'm all for this program and think that we should move forward.
I agree.
Thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Next up, CDBG funding. And that's not being given by the library people, so we have to get somebody else on here. There we go.
Good evening, Mayor and Commission. I'm going to try to share my screen here. I will be talking today about giving an update from the community recovery team and our recommendations for use of the CDBG CV or COVID funding that the city has been allocated. So the community recovery team for Largo consists of representatives from multiple different departments. We've been meeting for several months throughout the pandemic to keep abreast of what is going on in the community, what's going on in our county, and throughout the nation as far as data trends, community needs, and also financial resources that are available to the community. So with this, we were tasked to provide recommendations on the best use of this CDBG CV allocation that the city is going to be receiving. This funding is through the Federal CARES Act program. It was allocated to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and then allocated out through the annual CDBG entitlement community. So that is why we are chosen to receive some of these funds. We're expecting $328,370. This funding has to be used for the mitigation, response, and recovery to the COVID-19 pandemic. The funding predominantly has to assist incomes whose income level is below 80% of the median income level. We have 6 years to utilize this amount of money. And one of the big things that throughout the pandemic for all funding sources is really making sure that we're not duplicating the benefits or duplicating paying for services that are already available or funded through other sources. And that has proved challenging. The recovery team throughout this process has come up with some amazing ideas of things that we really thought would be impactful in the community. And then literally sometimes within 24 hours, we'd see a news article that Pinellas Cares, a big allocation of money from their program, came out to support things like childcare services or, food distribution, things like that. So we really wanted to hone in on how we could help Largo mitigate further impacts, not just from this pandemic, but also from future pandemics and disasters, and help the community respond, basically work on recovery. So we went back to the city's strategic plan as a fundamental source for where we should head for this, and really honed in on the strategic plan goal to foster a community where opportunities exist for residents and businesses to realize their full potential. And this ties in very well with the Housing Division's new vision that was developed this past year to empower people to thrive in vibrant, inclusive neighborhoods. So this isn't a doing for, but basically doing with members of our community, helping them up rather than just handing out, so to speak. When we're evaluating different uses, not only for CDBG funds, but also for other initiatives that the city may want to identify or undertake to respond to this pandemic, we really focused in on, is it equitable? Who is most in need? How are services provided equitably? And same with this funding, how could we equitably improve conditions for people in the community that might need it most? And that resiliency component, we talk about it in terms of environmental resiliency, but there's also an economic resiliency component with this pandemic as well. And then lastly, feasibility. None of the recommendations that we have here tonight are staff taking on or expanding existing internal city programs, but rather looking at identifying nonprofits likely through an application process that could carry out the programs that we're recommending. So I want to make that clear too. We are going to be basically looking to partner with nonprofits to carry these services out. Just as some background, a lot of what we've identified was data sources, like I mentioned, both locally and nationally, and from a variety of different resources. But we also look back at kind of where Largo was even before the pandemic. I think a lot of you were on the board at the time a few years back when we had the report from United Way Suncoast about the ALICE report. And this is identifying not just folks that live at that poverty level, but really our community that works and lives paycheck to paycheck. It's ALICE's asset limited, income constrained employed. So our residents that have enough maybe usually to get by, but can't handle an emergency when it comes up. That puts them in that financial hardship position. And so this comes when we look at the equity component of how to utilize these funds. We've got a lot of families that are living that paycheck to paycheck that are in that ALICE category. Looking at COVID-prone jobs, not necessarily for just contracting COVID, but also with business closures or reduced service needs of the community, such as in our hospitality and service industries, our restaurants, bars, and that sort of thing, are definitely more prone to loss or reduction in income during this pandemic. We also have a growing population of grandparents that are raising grandchildren in the community. And so there's vulnerability aspects with that as well, especially, if grandparent is still working and, out in the community might be more medically vulnerable and is also the sole caregiver for the grandchildren. We've also found through our rent assistance program, unstable housing situations. We're finding more and more people that are on month-to-month leases or, alternative arrangements, I guess, so to speak, that don't have the protections necessarily of like eviction moratoriums and things like that. And then also our single parent households, if there's one income in that household and that person loses their job or has reduced hours, now we've got the situations with juggling school with kids potentially at home when there's one income coming into the household. And then also we've seen through data that there's specific populations that have been acutely impacted both economically and in terms of health through this pandemic. So in terms of equity, those are some of the groups we really tried to hone in on establishing how we could help them become more resilient and recover throughout this pandemic. So throughout this too, we reached out to some of the people that used our resident assistance program for rent and utility assistance. And what we saw from the feedback, from what their needs are, is really that determination to survive with their family and to come out better than they were before. This first quote on here is from a mom of 3 children who has had extreme hardships in her life. She's working nights. She had reduced hours due to COVID, but she's working nights and raising 3 children, juggling some at home, some at school right now for that. And her desire, as you can see here in this quote, is she wants to be able to make a living wage, to be able to make it on her own someday. Throughout the pandemic, we've been able to connect her with some services. She completed a financial education course. She's working on getting a voucher for housing so that she can be more stabilized and potentially work on investing in her own skill set to be able to stabilize her family long term. So the second one, this is a mom that her and her daughter were homeless last year, had just gotten on their feet and gotten their own apartment when the pandemic hit. She was a hairdresser and lost her job. And by the time she came to us, she'd already started finding a new career path for herself. And so I made sure to let her know about our down payment program as kind of that goal in the future to think about. And as you can see, she said, that's my next big goal. So, and this last one, you know, like I mentioned, we do have grandparents raising grandchildren in our community. And there's this desire, even though life's hard every day, to make sure that they can continue providing for those kids and keep them out of the foster care system. So definitely feedback was there's a desire to invest in themselves and make sure that their family is safe and secure. So as I go through the proposals that we have before you today, think about it in terms of similar to our CDBG program that we usually have a primary projects list and alternates list each year when you adopt the action plan. When we put this out for an application cycle for nonprofits, we're going to have a top priority list of types of projects, and then an alternative list if there's either funding available still, or if something falls through on that primary list, that we have some other options. Or as you'll see on the alternate project list when it comes up, that some of them may rise to be more critical along the way. So this first one we're calling Empower Largo, and this is partnering with nonprofits for navigator services to help with the long-term financial stability of vulnerable Largo households. We've seen a lot of success in our navigator programs in our police department with mental health, senior services, and homeless street outreach. And this is very similar. We're finding that there are a lot of resources through SPC and PTech and CareerSource Pinellas, but the knowledge and accessibility within the residents to get connected to these programs is lacking, as well as everyone's got their own personalized situation with accommodations they may need. For example, we may have households where they have someone that's medically vulnerable and they need help getting access to work from home types of jobs or skill sets where they could work from home. So this is looking at basically a similar type of navigation service or case management, you might want to call it, to help our vulnerable populations get back on their feet, get stabilized, and hopefully end up with a higher resiliency level than even before this pandemic. So these are just a few lists on here of some of the items that it might include, but it can also include some direct assistance. For example, with CDBG, we can help with childcare services or employee training. So there might be a component where someone could take a low-cost IT certification that could help get them the next industry certification to get them at a higher paying job within 3 to 6 months, things like that. So we would allow that flexibility and that component in there in that application process. And again, allowing these nonprofits to kind of show us what they do best and what they propose of how that would be structured in their application. Are there any questions on this one first? This is our top priority project.
Any questions? Sounds good.
Okay. So the second one we coined off of the safer at home phrase that we've seen a lot during the pandemic, and safer at home, not just to protect from COVID, but we've got kids that are doing schoolwork at home right now, and that's making sure they have a roof over their head every day of the year. And so this really focuses on what we luckily have staved off so far, but at some point there's likely to be a significant increase in the amount of evictions that are processed. So this component is not just direct rent assistance. It could include that as part of the process, but funding legal services to help residents and landlords work together for eviction mediation agreements, to help with eviction prevention, And then also can provide some training for landlords on what tools might be available. HUD's come out with a toolkit now that landlords can use for payback agreements with their tenants and so forth. So there's a bunch of components that could be used as tools to help stave off some of these evictions, aside from just direct rent assistance, which we're actively doing through our current resident assistance program right now. This is one that the county has put some money toward as well through CARES Act. CARES Act does expire December 30th. So that is why we're expecting by the time we get application cycles rolling and so forth, that it's likely going to be January when these activities would start. And so we're anticipating that bigger federal share of funding is going to go away and that there's going to be a definite need for this type of service. So we have used some techniques in-house. We've seen, with our rent assistance program, if somebody is month to month right now, and we've been able to get them, if the landlord knows that there's some funding to help with rent, getting them to extend to another 3 months on their lease, so that at least they've got a little bit more time to try and get their finances in order and get back on their feet. Any questions on this?
Any questions? Doesn't look like it. Thank you.
Okay. And then this last one is the tier 2 priority. Not saying that it's not important to provide food. Obviously, that's the staple that, one of the fundamental needs of all of our residents. But there is a significant amount of funding from the CARES Act going out to different nonprofits and distributed through Pinellas County for food distribution. The big what if is what happens after December 30th when those funds expire. We did get an estimate from Neighborly Network on the amount of clients that utilize that program or that have been added since the pandemic. The problem is that our funding alone would not cover that cost. It would run about $80,000 a month to cover the entire amount of clients from Largo that are using the Meals on Wheels program currently. So the recovery team also focusing on recovery as well, and some dual priorities. We wanted to add within this application component some other priorities as well. So for example, food distribution services that are able to hire on furloughed employees where they could help earn some extra money while they're furloughed until they can get back to work. And also food distribution services that might be able to go into low-income neighborhoods throughout the community that potentially use vendors that have been unable to work at farmers markets and other local events like that throughout the county as well. So there may be some, just our direct food service component to this, but some of the priority cases in this would be if they could show that they're providing that dual benefit of getting people back to work or bringing healthy foods into some of our lower income neighborhoods as well. And with that, any questions on that component?
Any questions? Nope.
Okay, and then the next step is just that we will start putting together the notice of funding availability for nonprofits. We would hold an application cycle this fall, probably for about 1 month. And then there will be another amendment to the consolidated plan or to the action plan for CDBG. We had added the money in already earlier this summer, but HUD wants us to go back and be a little bit more descriptive on exactly what types of programs we're funding through it. So once we establish this, we're able to pursue that clarification in the CDBG plan. And our goal would be to have services up and running by the first of the new year. And I'll take any questions.
Any questions at all?
Not a question, Mayor, more of a comment, but just wanted to say, Arrow, thank you to you and this team for putting this together. We are all well aware of financial situation of many Largo residents right now. And, I'm extremely happy to be able to try to put this thing together, or for you guys to put this together. We just get to sit here and talk about it. But, there's a lot of people in Largo right now who would not be anywhere, it wouldn't be sleeping in a house, or it wouldn't have a roof over their head, or wouldn't have anything to eat right now without the hard work that you guys have done. And I cannot tell you how much I appreciate that. I was just sitting here thinking during this presentation, I think prior to COVID, we saw you maybe like 3 or 4 times a year. And I think we see you just about every meeting now, which is okay. You're doing a fantastic job. And I can't imagine the amount of work, how much extra work this has brought on to you and this whole recovery team. So thank you guys very much. I'm sure that all the people that you guys have helped are extremely thankful for everything you've done as well. So that's all I had. Thank you.
Anyone else? Well, yeah, thank you. I think that this money will do a lot of good in our community, and thanks for putting all this stuff together.
Thank you.
All right, well, moving on to, does anybody have a board or committee report that they'd like to share with us?
I can share a little bit with PSTA if you don't mind.
Please, yeah.
So at our last meeting earlier this month, or excuse me, last month, sorry. The PSTA board approved sending a letter in support of the proposed pedestrian underpasses on US 19. As you might be aware, if you're traveling on US 19, where there are overpasses now, there's not many places for pedestrians to pass, except for those few places where there's intersections. So moving forward, FDOT has plans to make those flyovers head north through the county, and there's going to be a couple places where there's one spot where there will be a pedestrian bridge, and another spot where there will be a underway for pedestrians. That'll be around 580 and County Road 95. So that was that. And then the other, there's a talked about a shelter deployment plan. I spoke with Henry briefly about this last week. We're trying to meet up with our community development department and find out where we are with the PSTA and working with them, trying to get some newer, better shelters for some of the high traffic bus stops here in the city of Largo. So that's what we have right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Was there any, I heard a little bit of the conversation of those underpasses for pedestrians. Were there any within the city limits of Largo proposed?
Not proposed. So PSTA just sent a letter in support, but so the plan is for the extenuation, I guess, of the overpasses from basically the Countryside Mall area north of
right.
So all of that is going to be in the north part of the county, and those will so the underpasses and the overpass, the pedestrian bridge will be in that section. So unfortunately, no. It's definitely something that we need. I can tell you that I was on a ride along with Largo PD not too long ago, and that the intersection of 19 and Roosevelt was the most heavily walked intersection I've seen in the city of Largo. It was incredible, the amount of people I saw walking through the intersection. So hopefully we can work on that in the very near future.
Very good. Thank you. Commissioner Smith.
Kind of tie in Commissioner Robinson, Ford Pinellas is going to get a presentation on that the underpasses tomorrow. And once we have that and whatever the presentation is, I'll forward it to the commission. But it is the North County past in the Clearwater area that they're talking about it. I think it's Republic Drive, I think it was that they were talking about it. But I'll get that. And also WIT's going to be covering the US 19 corridor workshops. So once we have dates and what that's all about, I'll get that to the commission. We also will be covering, again, a presentation from Mike Mandel from Pinellas County Economic Development on projects they're doing. And I was hoping to see what that's about, and maybe down the road having him come to present to us what the county is doing for economic development plans. And then also we're going to have a land use item on our agenda tomorrow. It's relating to the church property off of East Bay that we already voted on. So that'll be on tomorrow's agenda. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Any other committee reports?
Just wanted to say that our continuum of care was postponed till this Friday because of the holiday weekend. So I'll give any report that I have on next Tuesday. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Moving on.
Mayor,
Go ahead.
If that underpass engineering is a huge success, that'd be a nice way to get people from downtown Largo over to Largo Central Park.
Yeah, they're building the road over top of the flat ground.
Oh, okay, I got you.
There's a railroad that is, I don't know if you know this, but CSX is a little tough to work with. And you can go on record with that too if you'd like. Commissioner Carroll, do you have anything?
Nothing more than that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Commissioner Smith?
I have nothing. I'm good.
Thank you. Commissioner Robinson?
Just a quick congratulations to Henry, as well as all of the rest of the Largo staff that received their service recognition awards today. It was a great ceremony, even though it was virtual. You guys did a great job. Henry had I think a really nice video and some nice key players in there to point out that Henry's been here for quite a while now. So just thank you to everybody who put that together. And that's I think all I have for tonight.
Thank you. Commissioner Holmes?
Yeah, what Commissioner Robinson just said. Plus, I think that was a bottle of Jack Daniels that Henry had before.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Holt, Vice Mayor Holt.
Just thank you to Henry for 40 wonderful years. Unfortunately, I missed the presentation this afternoon, but I'm sure it was pretty wonderful. And I'm sure that there were probably a lot of highlights regarding you over a 40-year period. And then also, again, to piggyback off of Commissioner Robinson, Errol Woodard has done a fantastic job over these last, since the beginning, pretty much the beginning of the year. And I would just like to say thank you to her and her staff. She's really gone above and beyond, which a lot of our staff do. But just wanted to tell her thank you also. And that's all I have tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Finger.
Hi, thank you. Just two items. I would echo the same regarding congratulations to everyone who received a service award today. And certainly a big thank you to the marketing team. I'm guessing put together the various, the video for Henry, as well as the Parks Department. They had some funny stories and for their service awards today, and learned a few new things about some city employees that were some really good, funny stories. So thank you to everyone. Also, regarding the business spotlight we had today, I thought it was interesting that in one of the questions that was asked of why Largo, and the doctor, one of his responses was about the sense of community and belonging that he felt here, and that we've continued to create, and that he's noticed downtown. I think was really reflective of the work that we've all put in to that area, and how he still felt that he felt that way since he's grown up here, but he felt that still seeing that, so many years later in his career, he still feels that sense of belonging and community that he felt even when he was younger. So I like that tie that he still had, even though the changes are taking place, he's still feeling connected to the place that he's known for so long. So I think that speaks volumes about what direction we've been moving in, and that it's a good positive direction, and more that we're continuing to make those connections with all the different businesses, but also the individuals who are those businesses making those decisions to be there. So that was a really great business spotlight today. Thank you.
Thank you. And he's a cardiologist, and he said we've got a good heart in Largo, so
yeah,
he would know. I'm not sure if he did that on purpose or not. I wanted to congratulate Gerald Marquardt over at the golf course for having 40 years with the city of Largo, and Henry too, I guess. So it was impressive though that not only Henry wasn't the only one that's been here for 40 years that we were celebrating today. So congratulations on everybody, or thank you to everybody that put that program together today. And that is all that I had. Mr. Schubert.
Well, he had a slight break in service, but I do have to mention that Commissioner Carroll started in the police department within, I think, 2 or 3 weeks after I started working for the city. So he's been here a long time too, which means we're both old. But anyway.
And you're not the one that made me collect library fines, Henry.
Yes, I was, yes. Thank you for mentioning that. And that's all I have today. Thank you.
Well, I didn't know a crossing guard counted toward the police department.
But do we have any action items?
I don't have any unless I missed something.
I don't have any unless I missed something. In that case, meeting is adjourned. Everybody have a good week.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Thank you.